Oh, sorry. I didn't know we were recording. It's just that I think full moon just recently passed by. That's kind of strange, isn't it? Speaking of strange, no, not Doctor Strange. But guess what just came out last week? Werewolf at Night, and we're gonna review it. This is another handsome review with your handsome host. Please, YouTube, do your thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Usually YouTube just does its, it's... Whoa. Did you just feel that? Kind of like we just turned on the lights or something. I don't know what's going on. But that was kind of weird. Anyways, welcome back to another handsome review with your handsome host. It is I, Jamiel Surita. So today we're not going to be talking about a show. We're not going to be talking about a movie. Instead, we're going to be talking about a holiday special. That's right. Werewolf at Night. It's something in between. Too short for a TV show and too short for a movie. So, let's get to it. So, Werewolf at Night was a very unique holiday special, starting with the fact that it was done in black and white, which I think helped it stand out from all the other Marvel stuff that we get. Because you know me, I love Marvel. But when we get something different or really kind of like exercises your patience when it comes to like the genre or the way that it's created, I feel like that's where you get something really worth watching, It has to be something that stands out on its own creative wise. And it did with the black and white aspect to it. One of the big things I wanted to talk about was how it brings up the ideas of the original monster movies, which was done by Universal Studios. Originally, they had these movies in the 1930s and 40s. One of the big movies they had was Frankenstein. And Frankenstein is something that I felt was used in this movie because the setup, now I'm going to go into spoilers for the special. The setup of Werewolf by Night is that there's a whole bunch of hunters who are in a place trying to mourn and also replace Ulysses Bloodstone, who is like a huge monster hunter. And so they're competing to replace him. And then eventually it's revealed that the monster that they're hunting is manthing, whose name is Ted. And so when Ted is first introduced in the story, he comes in kind of like this scary monster thing that you would see in the 1940s because all you see is his hands. And a long time ago, and during that time, they would use prosthetics or anything that is done, physically, because they didn't have special effects that they do, in today's world of cinema. So a lot of that type of stuff was used for this special. And so I thought that really helped out. And then the fact that Ted is actually needing to be rescued because they're going to kill him also invokes the idea of like a damsel in distress. But in this situation, a damsel in distress is not a woman, but a monster who's misunderstood and just needs help so he can escape. And then you get that in the form of Jack, who is our protagonist, Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night. So it's eventually revealed that they're friends and that he's trying to help rescue him, and that's why he's within these hunters' ranks. No one knows that he's a werewolf and he's just hiding it. So that's why I thought that when they were setting up the story and everything, and the way they kind of designed Man-Thing, he looked adorable, and I think that was done on purpose to a certain extent, because obviously he was huge, and in the way they used him against the other hunters, it was kind of scary. But when you got to know him, he was adorable. And I think that's where they were trying to kind of bring up the original Frankenstein. So I thought that was great with that aspect, especially when you saw more of like the Jack and Ted relationship. So, Werewolf and the Man-Thing creature, they were, you could tell that they were friends all the way till the end when he ends up basically rescuing on Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night. So that was really good. Another aspect to it was that they had like the black and white, right? And the black and white I thought was handled right. It created more of an atmosphere for the story. It created more of I felt like an immediate situation, especially once we got to the end and then like basically day started coming up and then you just hear somewhere over the da-da-da-da. I don't want YouTube to copyright me for saying words. So don't copyright me, YouTube. But yeah, basically they use a somewhere over the rainbow metaphor to kind of say, this was the idea of reversing, going from one world to the next. When I heard that it was in black and white, my first thought was, oh, wait, like Wizard of Oz. And it's exactly the concept they end up evoking because the story starts in black and white and then it goes into color. And then, you know, in the movie, originally everything was black and white, and then it goes into color, but the rest of the movie's in color. So this was kind of like the inverse of that, the reverse of that. And so that makes sense to a certain extent, especially because the characters are these kind of black and white type of characters where like the monster hunters are kind of seen as like the good ones and they're just hunting down the evil monsters. But as you can tell, the evil monsters were actually the hunters and not the monsters. So I feel like, especially when one of the characters were concerned, Elsa Bloodstone, who's a monster hunter, becomes friends with the werewolf before it's revealed that he's a werewolf. You kind of get that type of thing where it's like, oh, maybe not all monsters are bad, and maybe not all monster hunters are good. You know, so you could kind of see like this idea how there's nothing that's truly black and white. So they kind of represented that really well. Speaking of Elsa Bloodstone, she's basically the other lead character. She's the daughter of Ulysses Bloodstone, who's the creature that you get to see in the beginning of the story, telling everyone, "I'll be rooting for you," because he's dead. So basically the setup was that he died, and then he made like an animatronic type of thing that looks like him to give them instructions about how to replace him. And, you know, I thought that was kind of like whack because the character in the comics was really interesting. Basically, Ulysses Bloodstone, real character in the comics, was that originally he was a caveman who was exposed to some type of like crystal that came from a meteor, which actually came from aliens, and gave him the ability to become immortal. So I felt like they could have used Ulysses, especially because he was like this caveman turned into kind of like a caveman living among the humans as they evolved and everything. And I thought that I wanted to see more of that type of character. He seemed pretty different, and he seemed like he was a bad guy, so they could have used him. But they didn't really use him. It was just kind of like to set up the character Elsa Bloodstone, who's his daughter, which brings me back to my complaint, right? A lot of these characters that are big are becoming used to kind of just be replaced. For example, when they announced that they were making an Ant-Man movie, I was so excited. I thought we were going to get the actual Ant-Man, Hank Pym. But instead, we got Michael Douglas. You know, nothing wrong with Michael Douglas, but he wasn't leading the film. It wasn't about him. So I felt like now we got another character like that, Ulysses Bloodstone. They make him in this, basically this corpse. And then we don't get to see him because we're supposed to care about his daughter. But I like the daughter. I'm not knocking at the daughter. It's just that I think that they could have both existed, especially because he was immortal, right? That's his whole thing. He can't die. And then literally he's introduced as dead. So that confused me. Let's see. So the black and white, I talked about the original Frankenstein, Monster Hunter versus Monster. So, you know, that was the idea that I was talking about with the black and white turning into color, and how, you know, a lot of ways the Monster Hunter really is the monster. They're the ones that were doing all the damage and all the bloodshed and trying to hurt creatures. Basically, like the concept of killing monsters is hurting creatures. Because I'm pretty sure in this whole world that we live in, it's way too vast and complicated for us to know every single species out there. So what you're saying is that if a new creature comes in or a new species is discovered, people are going to go out and hunt them. You know, that's the concept of the Monster Hunter. So in reality, they were never really good to begin with. The monster were really victims of persecution and of discrimination. And I think to a certain extent, during the 1930s and 40s, they tried to represent that the best way they could in cinema. You know, and cinema is always exaggerated, it's always different. But obviously that's not to say that, you know, discrimination is just monsters or something, because that takes away from the real people. So I don't believe that, but, you know, it is something that's similar. And I think that that's the reason why the movies is so important in reality, because a lot of ways over the years, it was used as a tool to be able to express a different idea that maybe not everybody agrees or thinks about. And in an entertaining way, which makes it easier for people to listen. So, you know, that's why those type of movies are always important. And that's why I think monster movies deserve a little more credit than that. So, yeah, on the other thing, the werewolf, right? I'm going to talk about what everybody else talked about in the reviews, which is that it was pretty crazy. There was a scene where they literally chopped off a guy's arm off. So I was like, oh shit, Marvel's doing it. They're getting into the bloody stuff. But they used black and white. So we couldn't really get too much into the bloody stuff. But we did get a couple of good scenes of like scratching and attacking. And then the werewolf. I really liked the aspect that the werewolf didn't look like he was full CGI or anything like that. But instead, they used that type of character that you see in the original 1930s and 40s design. And I thought that was pretty cool, you know? It doesn't always have to be all CGI, and not every character has to look like this super top believable creature, especially if you're going to make a monster movie. So it could work like that, and it did. It did really well. So, I'm very interested to see what happens with Werewolf at Night in the future, if he'll cross over with Moon Knight, because in the comics, in a Werewolf by Night comic, they introduced Moon Knight. So to have that type of crossover would be great, or even the Hulk with Werewolf at Night. These are new creatures that could be used, especially now that the Incredible Hulk was basically nuked. If you watch like the She-Hulk show and any other Marvel movie that came out with the Hulk, he's kind of turned into a joke. But now you got this Werewolf at Night character who basically is like the Hulk, because he has this power that he can't control. And in a way, he has to try to find a way to control himself through it, So they're very similar in that aspect. Also, I wanted to say that they chose a great actor to play the werewolf. I love that we're having more Latino representation. I'm very excited about that. That's why I watched it as soon as possible. And I wanted to make a review just to kind of show, that's the power of being Latino. In the movies, it's a big part of on how we see the world. And to have stories where you have Latino representation is important, because you do have a big group of us living in the United States and all over the world, actually. So to be able to actually reflect that in the stories of Marvel and not have us just be like one throwaway joke every once in a while is big, because, we all share this planet. So it's always cool to get that type of representation. So I'm very glad to have watched it, and I will continue to support any Latino projects, especially if they make it into Marvel. So, Aquaman, I'm going to be, not Aquaman, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, I'm looking at you. I'm going to be watching that as soon as it comes out. And guess what I'm watching next? You guessed it, Black Adam. I'm getting my tickets this week, and once that movie comes out, I'm going to make a review for you guys as well. And stay tuned for tomorrow, which basically will be like today, because I'm posting it very late at night on Wednesday night. I'm going to make that review tomorrow night for the finale of She-Hulk. So definitely stay tuned for that. And thank you for continuing to watch my videos. My last She-Hulk video is doing pretty well. Thank you to everyone who's clicked on it. I really appreciate your help. It's got around 90 views, so I'm pretty happy with that. We just got to keep grinding it out. We got to keep making these reviews and talking about stuff. I just kind of wanted to end this review with a quick thank you, and just to let you know why I do this. I make videos because I need a place where I can talk about my passion, my obsessions. If you know me outside of these videos in person, you know that I'm really just always thinking about movies. I eat, sleep, breathe movies, and to be able to do something like that is really special. This is not me. I don't make a career out of this or anything like that. I hope to in the future. But in the meantime, I do feel really blessed to be able to do this, to make these type of videos and to talk about the things that I love. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you tomorrow.